Hello, and welcome to the Movie Universe. I'm your host, Movie Fan. Today, I'll be talking about the hit series, Matlock. Now, I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with this series because it has been on for quite a long time. It started in 1986 and ended in 1995, and even after it ended, it is in syndication to this day. It's on just about every kind of TV channel out there, from WGN all the way to MeTV. For those of you who haven't seen it, and that's a pretty small margin, I'll give you a rundown. Matlock is a lawyer, or a defense attorney. He defends people who he believes are truly innocent. If this is starting to sound like Perry Mason, you would be right in that assumption because Perry Mason was the inspiration for this show. There was even a couple episodes where they actually quoted some famous lines from Perry Mason. They wouldn't want to admit it, but it was. The only difference here is it takes place in Atlanta, and Matlock is a Southern attorney, played by the legendary Andy Griffith. And unlike Perry Mason, he went through several different partners and investigators over the years. During the pilot episode, which was actually a two-parter, and it's probably one of the most memorable episodes because his character profile is so different in this. He came off as a real tough attorney and a real clever kind of guy, almost like a shyster in a way. Obviously, it was the first episode, so they were doing the character profile. They were trying to make him evolve. And after the pilot episodes, they changed him around to be the more lovable, cunning lawyer with a southern drawl who does whatever he can to help his client, a lot like Perry Mason. But he's very clever about exposing the killer right there in the courtroom. In fact, he knows who did it right before he even gets in there. And unlike Perry Mason, he actually won quite a few cases with just reasonable doubt instead of actually exposing the killer. And unlike Perry Mason, who had Della Street, who was played by the beautiful Barbara Hale, he had his daughter Charlene work with him, who was played by Lori Lethin. And to be frank, she was terrible. She was so terrible that they immediately replaced her with someone better. For her character profile, she immediately fell in love with their client faster than you could say Southern Fried Chicken. What was even stupider was she was actually referring to her own father by his first name, Ben. She was constantly calling him Ben. My dad has had a theory that maybe that's what lawyers do when they work together. They have to go by their first name even though they're related, but I don't buy it. Because she's even calling him Ben out of the courtroom. That drove me crazy for years, and it still bothers me to this day. Now, granted, that was the writers doing the talking, but still. And to make matters worse, she was uglier than a train wreck. I know, that's a terrible thing to say, but it is the truth. And let's get real, folks. Hollywood standards, all women in movies and television are supposed to be goddesses. That's the whole thing. And unfortunately, we're so used to that, we cannot get away from it. Not even me. When episode 3 came around, they replaced Lori Lethin with Linda Pearl. She was a lot better than Lori Lethin because she actually had a better character profile. She wasn't constantly falling in love with the clients. I know that's not fair because Lori Lethin was in only 2 episodes, but still. I think Linda Pearl fell in love with one character, at least I think she did. It wasn't very clear. And at the same time, she did do that annoying thing of calling him Ben. But she seemed to do it mostly in the courtroom. Of course, I cannot talk about the early years of Matlock without talking about his investigator, Tyler Hudson, who was played by Keane Holiday. Oh man, that guy. He was there for quite a while, and he always got the crap kicked out of him. But somehow he always managed to get the information that Matlock wanted. And there were times that he was really at the top of his game. Probably the best episode would be the 2-part episode where he and Matlock went to England to try to defend someone who was on trial for murder. And believe it or not, this is when we get a shift towards his new associate, Michelle Thomas, who was played by the beautiful Nancy Stafford. She was so much better than Linda Pearl in so many ways. I mean, she was always there to help any way she could. She actually did a real great job of being his associate. She was on the ball 24/7. She really knew how to work the angles in the courtroom. But mostly it's the fact that she was eye candy. She too was there for quite a while. In fact, I think she was there the longest because she was so popular. Everybody loved her so much. And during that time, Keen Holiday, who played Tyler Hudson, ended up getting replaced with Conrad McMasters, who was played by Clarence Gilliard. You would know him best as Ranger Trevette on Walker, Texas Ranger. This was way before that show, though, and he was a great investigator. He could get into stuff and get all kinds of answers. And he didn't get knocked out too many times, unlike Tyler, who always got the crap kicked out of him. For quite a few years, this trio was one of the best teams to ever be on television. And in a way, they ended up kind of getting a fourth character, Julie March, who was the assistant DEA. She was played by Julie Summers. You might recognize her because she has been in a lot of TV shows. Often at times, you saw her and Matlock face off in the courtroom like Hamilton Berger and Perry Mason. The only difference is they worked together quite a bit. And there was an obvious budding romance between those two. However, it never really came to be. And after quite a few great episodes, we end up losing Michelle Thomas to Matlock's second daughter, who we never knew existed until now, Leanne McIntyre, who was played by Bryn Thayer. She was a good character on the show because, unlike Linda Pearl, there was more of a father-daughter relationship going on between her and Matlock. It was really good stuff, too. In fact, it was almost comedic here and there. You know, you got moments like with annoying relatives, that sort of thing that they bring up here and there. Great stuff. In 1993, Clarence Gilliard got a better offer, and that would be Walker, Texas Rangers. So he left the show and was replaced by Cliff Lewis. He was played by Daniel Roebuck, and believe it or not, he actually made quite a few appearances on Matlock before he became Cliff. His character was that he was a young attorney trying to learn the ropes, trying to really get up there in the world. And he was also the son of Matlock's old friend and nemesis, Billy Lewis. I say nemesis because, to make a long story short, when Ben was a real young fellow, he dated Billy's sister for a while, and she was a real mean woman. And after Ben broke it off with her, she ended up living with Billy until the day she died, and she made his life miserable. So, yeah. And he was always holding that over Matlock's head, too. Of course, he didn't necessarily go with that. They just called each other jackass every now and again. After some more great episodes, Bryn Thayer was replaced by Cliff Lewis. He took her place. And they ended up getting a new detective, a female detective, named Jerry Stone, who was played by Carol Houston. She was probably the most unique detective out there. She was a former police officer, and she was tough. I'm not kidding. She was really tough. She kicked some serious butt. She was sharp. She was witty. She was also very pretty, too. I will not lie about that. And a few more good seasons came out, and like any other great show, it ran its course. But it wasn't just the changing of cast members that kept the show going. It was also the cases. They had some real amazing cases that took them in quite a few parts of the country. There was a few times they went to L.A., there was one time they went to England. There was one that even involved a prime minister. There was even one episode where Matlock was trying to help a ghost solve his murder. And that's probably one of the greatest episodes out there. And of course, keeping up with the trend of the 80s and 90s, this show also featured some of the greatest celebrities in movie and television history to guest star on this show. Dick Van Dyke guest starred on the show as a killer judge. Don Knotts was a regular on the show for a while. He played his crazy neighbor. He even had some really big stars like David Carradine, the late David Ogden Stiers, and so much more. Of course, most of the celebrities who guest starred in the show ended up being the killers. But, you know, that made for a different change of pace, so it was all good. If you haven't seen this show, and I highly doubt that, you gotta look it up. It's a very great show, definitely worth watching. And I do recommend, if you've never seen the Ghost episode, look that one up. It is a great episode, definitely worth watching. In fact, I can help you find it. The episode is called The Ghost. But I'll say it again. If you haven't seen the show, look it up. And definitely look up The Ghost. You'll love it. This is Movie Fan, signing off.